So when I realized that I'm not going to talk him out of it and that he is going to successfully do it, I just said, you know what? I actually want to be a part of that. I want to live tweet that shit. I want to be there for the ride, make sure, see it with my own eyes, and say I was there when John Lovegrove hit 77 breweries in one day.
I'm sure people have done pub
Oh,
crawls.
sure. I think people have hit double digits in a day, but low double digits. I bet you no one's hit 20 in a day. I don't even know if they've hit 15. This is a silly thing to try to conjure up, but 77, 50, no way. No one's dumb enough.
I mean, I've contacted the Guinness Book of Records numerous times.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
The Guinness Book of Records doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
Why?
Because they say, we don't want to encourage excessive drinking. First of all, it's the Guinness Book of Records. It's not the Pampers Book of Records. It's the freaking Guinness Book of Records. It was founded on arguments in the past.
Man, that is good.
And second of all, they have a record for solo pub crawl, which the record is 50, and it requires a half pint at each pub. So they have a record that has 25 pints in a day. They won't let me do an ounce at each one. They won't let me do 2 40s in a day. It's ridiculous.
All right, well, you just have to drink half a pint at 51 of the 77 breweries we hit. Duh. Don't chicken out.
Yeah.
Don't chicken out.
Not going to happen.
Don't.
It's better to complete than to fail.
Is it? Is it better to burn out or to fade away?
When you put it like that.
I finally got to the point where we needed to get some help, so I hired a graduate from Davis who was a graduate in fermentation science. That was Carl Ockert. And so he was my first employee at the winery, but it came out that he also did some fermentation of beers. And so we talked about what the possibilities would be to do a brewery. So I asked Carl to make me a beer, a home brew. And he came out with a stout, which I really enjoyed and was clean, was made well balanced. And so that got my mind going, and the process was interesting to me.
So there wasn't any equipment. So what we did was we used a lot of old dairy tanks stored in the winery, the Ponzi Vineyards winery barn. We hauled them out and cleaned them off, and they were old dairy tanks, some of them built in the 40s. And we turned those into brewing tanks. And, we made beer with sticks and rocks, basically, is what I tell people.
I think there was a simplicity to it. Everything was easy to understand. And, just in the process of making it, it really was handmade. You're in there stirring for hours and hours, and stirring the mash. It was interesting, I think, how well the beers were made, given how fairly rudimentary the equipment was.
My background was engineering, and the idea of making these beers, along with developing the process and the equipment to do that. And so I decided that we would take what little profits we generated at that time in 1980, the early 80s, into a brewery.
We were just getting going that summer. We were building the brewery, we're doing test brews, we're trying to get things ready, and I heard this rumor that somebody else was going to start up, and it was the Widmers. And I thought, oh God, there's no way, we're both screwed, because there's no way Portland's going to support more than one of these breweries. And here's going to be 2, we're both screwed. It's never going to work. So my heart just sunk. I thought, God, he needs to go to Eugene or Corvallis or someplace that doesn't have one of these, because it's going to be so much work to even get one of them to work.
I mean, we didn't have a blueprint back then, we just kind of learned as we went, and there were days that Rob and I would go home and it's like, is this thing ever going to work? I mean, we thought that we could make it work, but when you're dealing with the equipment that we had.
I think, kind of in our wildest dreams, we would be able to, brew and sell enough beer in Portland that we'd be able to brew and sell beer in Portland. And it really didn't go beyond that.
we were draft only, and we were gonna, having a retail or a pub as part of the operation was part of the original business plan. So we thought that if we had that plus 10 draft accounts in Portland, that was our business model. And if we achieved that, that we had a viable business.
The whole idea of making a living through, what it is that you love, I think everybody, thinks about that at a certain point.
We had no idea whether people would embrace a brew pub. Nobody knew what that was, 36 years ago. And so, and then we were more confident that we could get 10 draft accounts around Portland, but nobody knew what a microbrewery was. And so we were trying to develop credibility. So that was the plan.
Someone sent me a copy of a magazine from Washington. Anyway, there was an article in it about 3 breweries starting up. And we got looking at that thinking, I wonder if this is something that's going to happen. So we thought more and more seriously about it, and it seemed like a possibility. So we considered it more and more seriously for a couple of years and actually got going with Portland Brewing Company.
The early days of craft brewing in Portland, when we did our first brew January 15th, 1986 at Portland Brewing. Widmer had already been going 8 or 10 months before that. Bridgeport was like 14 or 15 months before that. But in those days, all the 3 of us, Bridgeport, Widmer, and Portland, we were on 14th and Flanders, and it's alphabetical in that part of town. So Widmer was at 14th and Lovejoy, and Bridgeport was at 13th and Marshall. So it was easy to call one of the 2 of them up, hey, have you got some malt, or can I get some hops from you, or travel back and forth, hey, how are you doing this, or how are you doing that? The doors were always open to go and share information at that time.
I think our first brew sheet, which is on the wall here, was October of 1985. Mike had actually homebrewed a little bit, but the interest came from just having fresh beer and then selling all these other beers that were becoming available on the market. So we kind of came at it from the other side. We weren't homebrewers and then brewers. We were guys that sold the stuff, and then we decided to make it. But it was evident pretty early on, like the first day we tried to brew, that we should get somebody that knows what they're doing in here. So we did it for a little while, then brought somebody in. Well, the main thing for us was doing small batches. If it didn't work, it's out of here.
You want to make blueberry beer? Make blueberry beer. Great. Rhubarb beer? Yeah, go for it. You were encouraged to be as weird as possible. So I learned a lot there about what works and what doesn't work, So that was a great start for me to actually, whether if I started at Portland Brewing or say Widmer, I would have been just making the house beers,
So doing small batches, you can change it all the time, always experimenting. And I can distinctly remember one of our beers came out and it was really yeasty. It was very cloudy. And we brought it out to regulars and they hold it up and they go, nobody's ever going to drink this stuff. You can't see through it. And, flash forward, Widmer Hefeweizen is one of the best-selling brands in Oregon.
Chuck Curry, owner of Cartwright, was out there on his own trying to sell his product, and it may be that that was very instrumental. I know he had sometimes had a tough time convincing a shop owner or a store to take product,
When you're the lone ranger out there trying to sell your product, no matter what it is, people don't look at it as carefully as if you have a group that go out there.
Of course, he was the first by several years, and we were, I know my friend Jim and I were very enthusiastic about what he was doing. And I think this was actually before we started homebrewing, possibly. But we wanted so badly to like what he was doing because we were enthusiastic about the possibilities and the idea that somebody could actually start a small brewery in Portland.
He wasn't open for very long, but I think his involvement in the community and ability to involve the community in what he was doing and kind of excite people about actually financial success making a beer that wasn't Henry Weinhardt's, that wasn't Budweiser, it was an incredible thing to have happen.
And he had to start from scratch. You know, there wasn't any equipment, basically, and some of the equipment that he did acquire was pretty much the fault of how the beers turned out.
He got this small brewery in Southwest Portland and started brewing. And one of the Widmer brothers said once to me that if he had been brewing now, we would have all celebrated it as like this funky farmhouse ale. But consistency-wise, he was behaving more like a vintner than he was a brewer. He wasn't really tight, as far as I know, on sanitary conditions.
Unfortunately, some of the beers were tainted and had a problem in the market. And Chuck had started with probably the most difficult phase of beer making, and that was bottling it.
He had an old soda bottler that he had converted to beer, and just wasn't successful, unfortunately. But it did establish a beachhead and indicated to several of us that such a thing was possible.
I think it's the sort of classic line of, hey, if this guy can do this, if he can be doing it in this setup and actually be producing beer that people were willing to try.
Certainly was positive in the fact that here was somebody, brewing here that wasn't one of the large breweries, and that was very exciting.
I remember going to the brewery and it was like we started, a bunch of haphazard pieces of equipment that he had, put together and tried to make beer. And with some success, some not so good. But it's that inspiration that I think all of us early guys remember him, remember that beer. Well, at least he tried, and he tried it his way. It was neat to see.
To see that this is a person who at a smaller level is not, he was never going to take on Henry Weinhardt's when, they were still at full force operating in what we now call the Pearl. He was never going to be a challenge to them. The fact that he even tried to do it was inspirational.
I don't care if I'm legless, Stevie Wonder or deaf. I just want to be noticed by everyone and their friends. A giant ham in the city, a baby Ruth on the shelf, an MVP in the sidelines, side coaching silently helped, Nebraska crying for pity, a boring state to its core, a science teacher with sideburns, whoa, whoa. A lying preacher with horns adorned. Please, can I postpone it? I just need a moment. I hate getting old. Please, can I postpone it? I just need a moment.
The brew pub bill was a concept where we could have the same privileges or nearly the same privileges of a winery.
Kurt Widmer, Rob Widmer, Brian and Mike McMinimum, Dick Ponzi, Fred Bowman and I had been talking about trying to get legislation. And I said, I have a friend of mine. He's a representative in my neighborhood, as a matter of fact, right down here. And I see Tom, and I'll see him sometime this week. Sometime I'll either go to his office or I'll see him at the Multnomah Club. And so here he was, and we were showering at the Multnomah Club, and that's how I approached him. So that's absolutely true. He tells the same story the same way I do.
We naively assumed that decision-making for legislators would happen in the hearing. The committee chair says, do I hear any discussion? And one of the members said, move to table, and another member said, second, and boom, done.
And we were completely shocked by this and didn't understand what that meant until finally it was explained that the bill was killed.
We went through a very steep learning curve, but boy, did we ever get our ass kicked the first time around.
One of the representatives, the House, suggested that we attach the brewpub bill, the language of the brewpub bill, into a bill that had already passed the House and the Senate and was in conference committee. And they attached this as an amendment to a bill that was already passed. And we just crossed our fingers on that. And that bill was just had to go to the governor for signatures. So by June of that year, it was signed and became law.
So this change in the law was a big change where, you know, you can actually brew beer, and how they got that designed and so forth was magic.
So that was fantastic, and I think immediately the McMenamins had a pub, and they incorporated a brewery in the basement and had the first brew pub beers coming out of their taverns.
Now, when the regional breweries started closing, the craft breweries in the Northwest couldn't have written a better script for themselves. Hollywood couldn't have done it any better. Here we are. We had our brewery closed down in our city. We lost the regional drinkers there. Earlier, the brewery across the river in Lucky Lager, it had closed up and got torn down and shipped to China. Rainier and Olympia got closed by separate ownership. So here we had our 4 major yellow beer, regional yellow beers closed down in our area. Holy smokes. If I would have asked for that, it wouldn't have happened.
The brew pub, which was really fundamentally important because draft beer is so much less expensive to produce than bottled or canned beer.
So us small brewers didn't have to start out with a bottling line. We could just start out draft because there was a lot of draft beer being sold in this state because of those regional breweries that I mentioned wanted to push their draft beer.
You know, you got all the confluence of all these things, and all of a sudden, who knows, this entrepreneurial homebrewer, his business has taken off. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but his business has taken off. And I think it was a very special time and a real inflection point.
This friend who says, Mike, you always got your head up in the clouds. You're looking soaking wet, why'd you want to live like that? For crying out loud. See, she can't see, there's no place I'd rather be in the USA. Yep, you bet it's right here on the Willamette, and that's where I'm going to stay. Let the rain fall down. I'm a rambling man who finally understands where he belongs. Let the rain fall down. Of all these towns and states, I just can't wait to.
There's so many good retail accounts that were willing to take a chance on it. Bill McCormick from McCormick and Schmick's came down, and he was there for our first brew in the brew house, and it was a long day. And he was just, I think, kind of fascinated by this idea of these people making beer in a small scale. And so he was Jake's famous crawfish in the McCormick chain were some of our first accounts. Don Younger at the Horse Brass, God bless him, he was there, you know, and he was right there all the way with us, trying to encourage us as much as he could.
So we have a very good customer called Dublin Pub. And Carl Simpson, he was the first proprietor. He really embraced craft brewing right from the start. We were selling him beer in '85. He was literally one of our customers, and he was so excited about it. I remember, you know, at that time when we would go out and sell our beer, nobody had heard of craft beer or microbrew. Nobody knew anybody who brewed. It was such a different time, and I think, you know, we would come into these pubs, and people first thought it was illegal. Second, they thought the beer would make them sick. I mean, just nobody could conceive of it. And then we encountered Carl, and he was so enthusiastic and so well informed. He was like a breath of fresh air. But he was one of the first guys to want as many beers on tap as he possibly could.
Don really was kind of the bell ringer, I'd say, for craft beer.
He wanted to share it with everyone, so he got pretty heavily immersed in, doing a lot of different little, promotional things. But he also supported the breweries. Like if you talk to Alan Sprintz, he started up Hair of the Dog in '93-ish. Wasn't long before Don gave him a permanent tap handle at the Horse Brass. because he loved his beers and he wanted to show these beers off. He was definitely a big supporter. You know, his enthusiasm for beer was definitely infectious, and so it gave us confidence that we were doing the right thing. Just the fact that he had a real bar and was willing to put our beers on tap, he was a great guy in my book.
I don't think we will ever know how many different businesses Don Younger seeded with just, you know, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. Here, let me help you with this. Let me help you with that. Oh, you pay me back later when you can. I don't think we'll ever know how many businesses he seeded with that, but we know it was a lot. And he was always there to help out somebody locally.
I mean, the horse brass has always been, you know, kind of the spiritual heart of this whole thing. And Don Younger, you know, has always been the, you know, was always the shambling loon who inspired everybody.
Fred and Don, you know, were very important to me as a young brewer, because you could roll over to the horse brass and Don was always there, and Fred was a very special person for me because he was a great supporter of mine and what I was doing at Laurelwood and Old World.
Fred is our muse. Fred was the one that was writing about beer before it was even legal to brew beer at home, and he was writing about home brewing. Fred was the one who was there pushing those first craft brewers and asking them, you know, hey, why don't you try this style? Why don't you try that style? Fred like pushed them and made them do that. He's definitely the muse. He's in everybody's ear, he's in everybody's shoulder, and he's in everybody's hearts.
He really pushed it, and he appreciated the fact that we were experimenting with different things. And he, you know, he's a writer, so he was out there. He was our guiding light, and he was spreading the word.
He was such a gentle and gracious guy. I think he was at the top of the world, and he could have had an attitude. You know, he could have copped an attitude and been an arrogant guy, but he was the opposite of that. He was always really generous with his time. You know, for years and years and years, he would show up at every beer fest, and just random people would cruise up to him, and he was always kind to them because he was so recognizable. So, you know, 25-year-old people who just got into beer and finally realized, that's a famous beer guy. They would bomb up and talk to him about beer, and he was just really cool to them.
We do lament his passing, and it kind of puts an end to, you know, a lifetime, really. And I think that when I first started brewing back in like 78 or something, you know, it was a treatise on lager beers from Fred Eckhart. So it's just one of those things that nothing lasts forever. But in this way, too, it does, because it also is a great part of why we are a brewing community.
He and Jim would come in and have beers in the afternoon, and being a small brewery that where, you know, we weren't so busy trying to package beer and manage sales and all this stuff. I was at my sales management was sitting at the bar with Fred, talking with Don, talking with Jim Kennedy. Jim Kennedy was another great guy that came in to support me at an early age and had great words of advice.
Jim Kennedy, you know, who had started Admiralty Beverage, who was also, you know, I think a really important player, because then you had the distributor side of the industry, and he was importing a lot of, you know, again, classic beers.
And Jim, who I really think was as responsible for the growth in craft beer in Portland as any of the brewers were at the time, because he was really an evangelist and a true kind of Renaissance man when it came to fine beer and fine wine and so forth.
If you're thinking about living and dying someday, you better get busy with one of those and take me with you, babe. On account of the rain, let's go out walking today. We're living the dream and drinking our lives away. If you're thinking about sleeping, well, darling, you can sleep all day. And if you're thinking about staying up late, well, I'm thinking we can think of a way. On account of the sun,
the easiest way to think of it is Portland was built to brew. I mean, we had pretty great infrastructure. We already had some stainless steel fabricators. We had yeast propagators. We had Great Western Malting that had been set up to take care of the big breweries.
Yeah, Portland's a magical place. Nowhere else in the world do you get this density of beer per capita, right? So why does it happen here? The obvious things, the raw ingredients, this wonderful Bull Run water. You can't deny the great connection between, great water and great beer. Then secondarily, there's this hop basket here, if you will. We got 3% of the world's hops within an hour of us to the south, and another 2.5 hours to the north. In Yakima, you've got the other 20% of the world's hops. We got a quarter of the world's hops within about 3 hours drive. Our barley is coming from the Oregon and California border, so very much a local product. So you got the barley there too. You got water, hops, barley, the yeast. One of the best yeast laboratories in the world is up on Mount Hood, again, within 70 miles of the brewery. So you got all 4 ingredients right here. So that really makes a lot of sense. But beyond that, you need these wonderful beer drinkers to actually consume the product, because anybody can make it. Selling it is the hardest part.
So we were used to drinking regional. We were used to going into taverns when it's rainy and cold and it gets dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're used to going in and being working class. 16 to 20% of the beer sold in Oregon was draft beer. And it is that way still, seasonally affected.
I think there's also, sort of the myth maybe, or the celebration of the Portland and the Oregon spirit of being pioneers, that we really are willing to try things, and that kind of experimentalism and pioneer spirit of you don't necessarily need to be sold something to try something.
In the Northwest, Portland, you say, would you like to sample, this is 35 years ago, would you like to sample my beer? Sure, give it me. Let me try that, in some markets they were like, nope, not interested. It's like, what do I do now?
Portlanders are anxious and willing to try new things, always. It's just what we do. We love what's new, what's happening, what's changing, even though we do like our normalcy and we like our, day-to-day kind of schedule. I do think that we're open, and that's why we thrive as a community of beer drinkers, is that we're always trying to try something new.
It was about the people that wanted to do it, and then made it available, and then told their friends about it, and their friends told their friends, and it became culture.
A little bit of a rebel spirit, for sure. Some of it's founded, some of it's just bluster, but yeah, I think we have some of that here.
They support themselves, and they want their community. They're very proud of their beer community here. So I think they funnel their own funds into that.
And we have this entrepreneurial spirit that's always been a part of Oregon, that people just want to go out and do something. And we seem to have a very artistic sense of community here, and brewers are artisans. So I think that it was a perfect storm that came and created this amazing location.
It didn't just happen naturally. And you say it's not a surprise that it isn't as easy in neighboring states of ours. And it's because people put in some really good work and convinced legislators early on to do these crazy things like legalize brew pubs that hadn't been legal since before Prohibition.
Some places are very hostile climates, and some places they only have an X amount of liquor licenses, and you can't have a new liquor license, right? If I want to open a pub or even a deli, grocery tomorrow, I can get that license, no problem, because there's not a finite limit.
If you go to Pennsylvania, they only have so many licenses. So if you want to open a bar or restaurant, you have to buy an existing license, and they may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally, which just rules out small independent operators getting into the business.
It took a lot of work early on from those folks to create an environment, both legislatively and market-wise, that would allow for the growth that's happened.
The state never taxed them out of business. We've always had a really low barrel tax here. We have, it's one of the lowest in the country. Go to somewhere like Hawaii and check their barrel tax. It's terrible. Don't know how anybody stays in business there that brews.
brewers far and wide, whether they've gone through a proper brewing education, a secondary degree just to be a brewer, or if they're just self-taught, essentially like myself, they are attracted to Portland because of the extreme skill level here and access to ingredients like hops and grains, grown locally, amazing water. There's just everything that a brewer wants is in this city.
I wouldn't say that Portland was the birthplace of craft beer. That we know that's not really true, but I do think that it was the cradle. I think it's where craft beer got nurtured, and I think it's because of the people and our spirit that really made that happen.
Miss you, old friend. I wish it was then. Faded brick street in a beautiful dream. All the old faces are here with me. When beer was like gold, conversation like wine, a little bit crazy for sure.
Well, I mean, you could always go down, with a cup and borrow a cup of malt, or maybe a few bags, or yeast, or whatever. I mean, we would go to some of the other breweries and hang out with the brewers there and see what they were doing. I mean, if we had questions, there were so very few basic settlements in this wilderness of ignorance in brewing that, sometimes, yes, you needed help from your colleagues, and really it was unstinting, and it was just a great time of collaboration and support and discovery.
For whatever reason, and there's probably a lot of different reasons, we all worked together, and did from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those environments where it's kind of like Silicon Valley, where everybody's there together, and it gets better and better and better, or like the Renaissance or whatever, where they have all these different people that are working together and inspiring each other, and also communicating with each other and sharing ideas, and you end up with the best.
I think that one of the things that really can't be underestimated is the value of brewing in a community with other brewers, even if you don't work with them on a day-to-day basis. I mean, there's literally something about the proximity of our brewery to, say, 75 other breweries in Portland and 200 plus breweries in Oregon that gives us access to this kind of, there's beer in the air here, and it's this ongoing conversation and dialogue between brewers.
It's everything that a lot of places talk about being. The community here is absolutely second to none as far as just really being what craft beer is supposed to be about, helping each other, sharing ideas, just the camaraderie here. It's just like nothing I've been part of before.
All these first-time experiences are fantastic, especially when it comes to collaborations, because you rely on the other people to kind of give you tips and hints on how they've done it, and that's what makes it a collaboration. You all talk.
So much fun because everyone has their way of doing things, so I think everyone learns a little bit. That just works better to do it this way, we never thought of, and they hopefully went away with the same thing.
That's the great thing about Portland Brewing, is it's a collaborative thing, and so honestly, it's everybody. Talking to Mike and Sean at the Commons, those conversations can be very inspiring, even though they might not even know it, that you go, huh. And it's those moments, and you get them all the time with whatever brewery you're around. It's like, you do what? And so those moments are kind of great because it gets you outside of your box.
Yeah, last time I brewed a beer at Lompoc, I needed some Galaxy hops, so I called up Ben Dobler at Widmer, or people will send their beers to the Widmer lab to get tested to see, how accurate they are on IBUs and gravity. They can plate them to see if there's any other, wild yeast bacteria, and a lot of times these guys will do it for free or just cost, you know.
And everyone's really supportive of each other, and it's not this cutthroat industry. We're 98% asshole free. I think that's the number that people say. We're really here to celebrate beer and to have a good time and to love life and love what we do. So it's a really awesome industry to be a part of.
It's a very tight-knit group. I mean, it's definitely, everybody knows each other. You go into an establishment, I mean, it's, hey, you know.
It's a history. If you've worked with somebody or you know someone, somebody else, they introduce you to another person. And then that person's like, oh, you know this person. So you're kind of known by who you've worked with and who you've trained under and who you know. And everybody kind of spreads out from somewhere else. And so that it's like you automatically have a connection. And that's kind of unusual for for a place. Like if you don't have a lot of breweries with a lot of history, you don't have that opportunity.
It seems like when something new opens, it's not looked at as competition.
It's true.
Because it's
wide
just
open arms.
This whole community. And that's one of the things that drew me into craft beer to begin with, is just the culture of it. Everyone is so welcoming and so inclusive and so down to earth. It's so rare to find a brewer that isn't like that. Yeah. It's a unique culture.
They all have each other's numbers in their cell phone. When someone has a question about process, ingredients, they send out a group text and bam, everyone is jumping to chime in to help them, and not to sabotage them. Oh, I don't want that guy to make a bad beer. They're competitors, obviously. People sort of maybe whitewash over that a little bit here, but everyone succeeds, and it is that rising tide raises all ships.
It's all competition, and it's stiff competition, but at the same time, we all know that we're in it together, and it's about taking market share away from the big guy, and it's all about raising craft beer's profile. So while I'll compete with the brewery down the street, or the two other breweries in Oregon City right now, soon to be 3, at the same time, we're all fighting this battle together. So we're going to do whatever we can to help each other succeed.
Who's underwriting this nightly imbibing? I feel as though the check is coming soon, and the price we have to pay is apparent by the day when the record puts the coda to the tune. I've assumed all along what I spoke in my song, that I'd come back with my head above my shoes. But I'm tempted now to sink, both by women and by drink, and I've given in to one out of the 2.
This whole concept of a bubble depends almost entirely on the degree to which people want to make money. And if someone's happy making $35,000, $40,000 a year selling their beer and tending bar, then that's totally sustainable. It's whether or not you want to grow into be a business that's truly profitable and kind of a moneymaker. There's only so many of those breweries that can exist.
Back when I started making beer, I looked at Durango, Colorado. I'd traveled through there right out of brewing school, and I was fascinated with the density of breweries there. They had 4 breweries for that town. And I was like, wow, how did they do it? How many people are here? There's 20,000 people in the city. There's 4 breweries. I go, okay. I just linked that in the back of my brain. A brewery for every 5,000 people. That's my metric. And I think that there's a lot of blue sky for new openings. I hope that every operator comes through really looks to have a meaningful engagement with their neighborhood and provide a nice gathering place. Really, breweries are gathering places, so every neighborhood can afford to have another gathering place. especially if they're doing a bang-up job and it's high quality in terms of the built environment, friendly people, and great beer. I think there's a lot more room for that kind of stuff. And the market will flush it out. You can't lie to your palate. You know when something tastes good or not. So immediately the bad tasting, low quality stuff should get flushed out and those places should go out of business. So I think the market will kind of control the density more or less, because you can put two breweries next to each other. As you can see what happened just downtown with 10 Barrel and Rogue, they're both doing great.
I remember when 10 Barrel announced, so they announced a couple months after we did, and my phone was going crazy that day with everybody who knew that we were, where they were gonna be and where we were gonna be, and everybody said, oh my God, Tom, are you still gonna open? And I said, of course I'm gonna open, and it's gonna be awesome when they come in, and I'm excited to have some Cucumber Crush. When they did open, their first week was one of our best weeks ever, because they were like the nicest people ever. And when they went on a long wait, they would say, hey, if you guys want good food and good beer, swing down to Fatheads. And when people would say, okay, we've had our beers at 10 Barrel, where should we go next? Hey, check out Fatheads, check out the Chutes, check out Bridgeport, check out Rogue. I mean, they spread the love around when they were just getting, hammered by people, and they didn't have to do that. They could have said, stay here,
I feel like it's more the merrier, really. People come here to be around good beer, and I think that everyone can survive.
They are a great example of why we are not oversaturated, and why I encourage other craft breweries to continue to open in Portland, to show that oversaturation is it's a negative mindset that I just don't believe in at all.
I tell people, so why don't you call Howard Schultz up and ask him when the whole coffee thing is going to come to an end? There are how many breweries in Oregon?
Like 220.
220? There are more than double that number of wineries. When's the wine thing going to end? Nobody has an answer to that. Really, I hadn't thought about that. Well, think about it. I mean, why is nobody asking when the wine thing is going to end? When's the bubble going to burst on varietal wine? But they seem to want to know that about beer. I don't think it does.
Craft brewing has been so successful for so long that some people, when they say bubble, they mean that a brewery might fail. And I do believe that breweries will fail in the future. Right now, even crappy breweries are selling 10% year-over-year growth, is posting 10% year-over-year growth. And so long as the market continues to expand, which the market itself is like more and more beer is getting sold every year, you have to look at, I think that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the balance between, if you only look at how many new breweries there are and you don't look at how many new barrels of beer are being drunk by Americans, you're only getting half the picture. So if there's a whole bunch of new breweries opening up and all of a sudden the growth stops, the volume growth stops, then I think we're in trouble. But the volume growth grew something like 18% last year in craft beer, which is insane for such a mature market. So as long as that's happening, I wouldn't expect mass casualties. I think that it's going to, at some point in the future, and I don't know if that's next year or 10 years or 30 years, there will be tightening. And then you'll see the weaker players get lopped off. And that's what you would expect to see. You wouldn't expect to see bad breweries survive. But right now, the market is so rich that even bad breweries can survive.
Some breweries will go. Not everybody who's in business today will be in business tomorrow. But there will be others behind them, coming right behind them to open up.
The previous bubble in the 90s, I think it was because people thought it looked like a good way to make money. And there's a lot easier ways to make a buck. And I think now people are getting into it for the right reason. And I think the beer is all really good, but I think just like anything, some people will find the beer portion of it, of operating a brewery is the fun part, and it's just a little cherry on the top.
You're going to get the nasty side of the business, which is somebody's going to buy a tap handle. And I've seen that in a few places. It happens like in places like San Francisco and Seattle all the time, because those are jaded cities, not pure and innocent like Portland. But we're losing that innocence, and
I've gone into some places with the beer, and the guy will openly say, oh, this brewery owns this tap handle, this brewery, and these are small breweries. Owning it meaning they're getting some kind of deal, whether it's free beer. So you're going to start to see more of that creep in, and I think it will hit.
You know, it's a little cutthroat because there's only so much pie, and you know everybody needs to stay in business. So it's interesting. I still think there's plenty of room for brew pubs. Breweries, you know, I don't know, but we will see. We'll see how it works out, and hopefully it works out great for everybody.
If your business model depends on knocking off Widmer and Deschutes so you can get a lot of supermarket frontage real estate in the supermarket, I think maybe that's probably a dangerous business plan. But overall, I don't see any evidence that that there's a danger yet.
There's always room, like I said, there's always room for quality product. As long as you're doing it, I mean, it's awesome. I think that Breakside's moving just just up the street. You know, that's only going to help. I think it's neat bringing the brewery blocks back, you know, into what it is. You know, it's a little harder to get around here than say like the Southeast or the Northeast. But I think, you know what, as long as you make product that's good, people are going to drink it. You know, and there's just not. I don't think there's a ceiling quite yet. You know, as obviously when you have 100 breweries in the greater area, so.
Most beer people don't drink at one place all the time. That's just not how we work.
We are in Lucky Lab right now, and there are 8 breweries within a half-mile radius of where we are sitting. 8 different breweries, half-mile radius. I don't know if there's anywhere else in the world that could claim that. Just this, you know, sort of Buckman neighborhood is amazing. But if you go a mile that way, there are no breweries within a half-mile radius. So there are so many neighborhoods that are quote-unquote underserved, but that just means that there's not a brewery within a 5-block radius. For Portland, that's how local we like it. That's how we want it. People want to be able to walk to the brew pub. Maybe they don't want to have to get on their bike and go there.
We don't have one in this neighborhood, but you can walk a mile in that direction or a mile in that direction, and or 2 miles in that direction, and we've got a brewery.
We all know how the story goes. In the end, what you reap is what you sow. So we circle round and round. Up the hill, pull the plow, then we all fall down. Everyone, every time, everywhere. Maynard No was a mighty man. All the meanest one alive in the way stand. And he cruise up every night like a cock in a pen looking for a fight with anyone, anytime, anywhere. Oh! Yeah.
I think that in general, craft beer marketed itself by being an anti-business, by being this kind of punk rock of the beverage world. And now as we grow up and get to the point where we have to deal with being businessmen and businesswomen and think about things like succession and what an exit strategy looks like, those kind of sundry aspects of brewing, of beer business, come to the forefront, and it has always been there. It's just now we're seeing a generational changeover from the first people who started craft breweries to people who are now owning craft breweries.
It's interesting. It's one of the most interesting developments, and traveling around Europe allowed me to see the future. You know, right now the United States has all these craft breweries, and they're owned by the people who founded them, but they will die. And their kids will take over the breweries. Or maybe not. You know, if they're successful breweries, maybe their kids want to cash in and get a law degree or something. That's what happens in Europe. The number of family breweries, by generation, you know, the likelihood that it survives to 2 generations, 3 generations, it drops off. I don't know what the math is, it's terrible. And you can see that's going to happen in the United States. We're just at this weird moment where it's all starting right now, and the same people who founded the breweries still own the breweries.
I don't know what I think. I mean, I know that I wish it didn't happen in some way, but I'm not quite sure I can defend that position. I think we're in a very interesting, peculiar time in the history of craft beer right now in 2015, and I don't know how it's all going to shake out. I mean, people have been predicting a bubble for years, and it hasn't happened. And people were predicting that, I mean, I don't think people were predicting that the new AB approach to kind of getting in on the craft market was going to be to buy all of these long-standing breweries, but it has been. Which in some ways, though, also makes sense it is in line with what they've done elsewhere in the world. It's not uncommon for these large brewery and beverage conglomerates to buy up smaller, successful brands.
I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather that not happen. But that's foolish to think that they're going to stop doing that. I've sort of, I don't know, come to terms with that. And this might not be a popular thing to say, but the beer coming out of the 10 Barrel pub here in Portland is fantastic. I love it, maybe even despite myself. Maybe I wanted to hate it or not like it as much. But Whitney is making fantastic beer. I think that Pearl IPA is one of the best IPAs made in Portland. So again, you know, I drink for flavor. I can't tell someone else. And people, I know that's an unpopular position to take here. Having said that, it's not the only game in town. Even if AB InBev or Miller Coors came in and started to buy a bunch of local breweries, even if they bought 10 or 20, all right, we have 40 left that are independent. It's very, very easy to support the truly local, independent craft breweries around here.
It goes beyond the passion of making the beer and the enjoyment of doing that to the reality of selling it in a very competitive market. So, you know, you go outside Portland, you go outside Oregon, you have your distributor here typically, but you have to have a network of distributing. So that's why I see these different entities, these breweries, taking on ownership or being bought out, is because, in order to grow, they need that distribution, and in order to do that, they need capital, and so there is an inevitability. Some ones, like Sierra Nevada, who were there in the early days too, have survived independently, but it takes a lot of capital and a lot of wherewithal. And you kind of had to be there in the early days just to get a foundation going.
You kind of need to feed the monster, feed the machine. You can only keep growing exponentially, but your costs also rise. So if you really want to keep growing, you need to expand. And you can only get so big here in Portland and Oregon. I mean, we're not a big state. Portland is not a big city. So you can talk about going to Seattle or Northern California or Idaho or wherever. But if you really want to keep growing, you kind of have to keep expanding. I think Widmer's did a great job on what they wanted to do. And they wanted to bring their product or take their product all over the country. And, they got into that deal not because they couldn't make awesome beer. They got into that, mainly for distribution and trying to get their product all over the place. And you need good distribution routes. So I think they did a great job. 10 Barrel, I don't think they did anything wrong. I mean, they're guys making great beer. They have 4 or 5 pubs. They own their own properties. They have hot brands. And, if somebody came knocking on my door for X amount of money, you don't know. You don't know till you're in that situation. I would say Elysian would be another great example. I mean, I know all 3 of those guys, and one wanted to stay and one didn't. Or I should say, one didn't really want to sell and the other 2 did. And, he's out of the deal now. And, but I think for Elysian, hot brands, and it's not like a big company like AB is going to come in and tell them how to brew. They might say, hey, you could improve this, or you could do this a little differently. But, the reason they're buying those companies is because they're making totally different products than what they're doing.
I don't get offers like that. I'm mostly getting offers from people who see brewing now as a big opportunity to make a bunch of money. I get offers to just sell this and walk away from it, from people who have their own idea but don't feel like building a brewery. I do get scary people in suits with briefcases offering to give me millions of dollars all the time, and they do not interest me. I'm not sure how that works, but I don't want any part of it.
The brewery's getting bought out, that's just business. And if you sold it, then you didn't want to keep it. So fucking sell it. I mean, who cares? You know what I mean? Move on. If that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. If Rob Whitmer came down here and threw out a big check for Upright, I might say, yeah, you watching, Rob? But no, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff gets sort of blown up. I mean, it makes for good talk and that sort of thing, but it's just business. So if one brewery wants to sell, I think you got to just sort of move on.
Oh, well, if somebody would come up to me and offer about $4 or $5 million for kind of what we do, I'd probably think about it. And, unfortunately, it's what I want to do. So I'd be like, okay, how could I start all over? And I probably wouldn't be able to start over for a few years. So yeah, I don't know, but obviously both those breweries that we just mentioned make a ton more beer, and it's a ton more money than $4, $5, $6 million. I mean, it's a lot of money. So, you can follow your passion and your heart and what you want to do, or, you can cash out for a few years and get back into it in a couple years.
I think it's bad for craft brewers. Having said that, I can't fault anyone for selling. For whatever reason, if they want to sell, that's fine. But, I don't have to choose to buy their beer anymore either. So as long as they are okay with that, I'm okay with them selling. I just think it's bad because I think Budweiser is going to really hurt our distribution. I don't think it's going to be as easy to get into places.
I'm strongly against these sales, and I get so frustrated on social media every time a sale comes up. And for me, it's just that whoever set the guidelines for what a craft beer is, those are those established guidelines. And so once you sell out, is your product still craft? Yes, technically. I mean, you're still making the beer the same way. However, your dollars, the people that are supporting your product, that dollar is not going to the craft beer industry. It's going into a much bigger conglomeration. It's no longer supporting craft beer. And those people that sell out now have the ability to have a greater presence and take over more tap handles, which hurts the little local guy that's trying to get his or her beer on tap. So I don't consider them craft anymore. They don't fit into the qualifications.
Let's not forget the local, the whole thing about local. Why do I want to drink a local beer? Because I know who made it. They're a friend. The owner's a friend, the brewer's a friend, the person that runs the tap room is a friend. There's nothing better than that than having something by someone and you like what they're doing, and you're supporting somebody in your community. So there's a whole lot of that to craft beer.
When you discover your new favorite beer and you know that it's made from a local brewery, you are enjoying something of that place, of that time, and of the person who created it.
When you lose that connection with why you're doing it, I think that can be an issue. I think that why people got into it in the first place was to make good beer and to make good beer available. And I think that's a very different outlook than, hey, what's our bottom line looking like?
When it happened in Chicago and Goose Island, that was very tough to hear and see. I don't like it. I try to steer clear of it. I don't want to fund a large corporation that is more about making profit than making a product I enjoy, and because I know that in the long run, even though they are buying up craft breweries, they're going to come down to shareholders want money, and they're going to start cutting costs, and costs are ingredients, and they're going to find ways, and scientifically, and yeah, it sounds and makes sense, but come the end product, it's not going to taste the same as it used to.
I think there's a place for all these beers. I mean, they're just, it's when they start deciding that we're trying to become who they're not, you know, like, oh, just say it's brewed by Budweiser, you know, don't tell me it's brewed by Joe's Brewing Company, you know, because it's not. It's like, just be honest with the consumer about who's making your beer. So it's kind of like they want to make beer like we do, but then they don't want to own it under their name. So it's like, they actually become more relevant if they, you know, said, this is Budweiser wit beer. It's not Shock Top. I mean, why wouldn't it sell?
I wasn't around for the back turn, and I couldn't divide it like a brand new year. And oh, and really now, and if we're all home living off the Radford, could you devise it like an open fair? And I couldn't decide on the right terms, but if you sign it, won't you dot that I? 'Cause it's yours and mine and I, and now we're all forced on the back burner. But could you drop it like a cosmic tear? And
You know, beer had become a very monolithic thing. And it was, you know, American-made domestic adjunct lagers. And they were all working toward a central flavor profile. Anything that had a unique flavor profile had long been discarded. And the greatest innovation to that point in beer was the creation of light beer.
They didn't know how to make flavor. It was boring, well-made boredom. Who wants to do that? I don't drink Sprite soda either. Why would you? What's in it? You know, it's just boring.
It was an alcoholic water. People drank a lot of it to achieve something that I could just shoot whiskey and I would be fine with. So I didn't view drinking until I started this business as something that could be enjoyed. There was a different relationship of like, you enjoyed the feeling of drinking versus the actual act of it.
More than anything, it just tastes really good. And there's so many other ways to doll that up, but I think that's the number one reason. It's a more interesting product and it has a more interesting flavor profile. That's why we all got into it.
The best thing that the craft brew industry really contributed, it was its diversity. And over the years, everything has just diversified more and more and more.
And that's the great thing about craft beer is all the beers are different. You know, one pale ale is not the same at another brewery. And that's an exciting thing. And there are certain ones that people like and other ones that people don't like.
I remember drinking these beers, realizing they are different colors, they have different flavors, they have different mouthfeels, textures, all this stuff. And it was sort of a one day, but really a 2-week discovery because of course they were just sitting there. So we took them home and we divvied them up. It was like kids on Halloween, like, instead of a Twix for you and a Twizzler for me, it was a Wild Boar Ale for you and a Blackened Voodoo for me. And actually, I say Blackened Voodoo is that Dixie Blackened Voodoo all malt Schwartz beer that I said, this blows my mind. It looks like one thing, it tastes like another. And that was when I said I needed to start exploring this product because was way more than the stuff that most American college kids drink by the suitcase.
There was a point in culinary school, I remember what beer it was. It was the Easy Street Wheat from Odell. And I was dancing at a concert, and I had that beer in my hand, and it was just tasting so wonderful, and just everything about it, the label, the swirl and pour instructions on the label just really captured me, and it's like, wow, you know, this is awesome. This is really good beer.
Feels like a damn good night to go out drinking with your friends. And if we have too much and we lose our heads, the means will justify the ends. You can hide and go seek, or drink alone, a lonely man. But I am the sardine.
I read this article that said that if you can stomach your first homebrew, one 16-ounce glass of it, then you are like on your way to becoming the next brewmeister. So I chugged my first homebrew as fast and as hard as I possibly could because it was not good.
The first brew I brewed was in college, and I had to try to fill up the carboy. And if you've ever been in a dorm room in college, you know, like the sinks, there's no way I could get the carboy filled. So I go in and like, Dave, what are you doing? And I got the shower, and I'm taking a nozzle off the shower head so I can get the carboy up there to fill it up. So I got the thing filled up, and then I brewed a stout with it, and it was unbelievable. It turned out really well. Subsequent batches were not nearly as good, but shower stall stout anyone. That was my first beer, so pretty funny.
I mean, I was the type of home brewer that would brew or try to brew a 9% double IPA that exploded in my closet. That was the type of home brewer I was. So by no means did I enter any homebrew competitions and expect to win. So I did it for the fun of brewing, not necessarily for how delicious the beer was.
Do you remember the coffee beer we did? So we did a coffee beer, and it was going to be great.
It could have been better.
And for the first 2 days, it was awesome. So we were trying to sort of recreate Java the Hop from Fort George, which is a great beer.
We actually spoke to Chris.
We did,
Chris
and
about
we made it really well, but the problem was we put the beans in the keg, which is the right thing to do, and after a day or two, you could taste the coffee. It was turning out great, and then we made the mistake of forgetting to take them out.
Yep. That's a problem. You got to take them out, or else.
Then they turned out this really awful, like, vegetal flavor and aroma, and we had to just dump the whole 5 gallons.
Yep.
Which sucks, but at the same time, I mean, it's 5 gallons. It's not
25 barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a really great home brewer who is kind of free of the constraints of, you know, do you know what your hop bill was last month? I think they can do some great work. And I also think some of those really great home brewers are now really great pro brewers. So it goes both ways, but it's a wonderful, you know, kind of cross fertilization.
They have the ability to do wild things as professionals, but it could really bite them in the butt. As home brewers, and I think I said this earlier too, we have a considerably smaller target than a professional brewer does, but we also don't have to spend that much.
Yeah.
So,
especially when you're buying, 50-pound bags of
Yeah.
stuff as a home brewer.
As cool as it is to that very first batch that I made that wasn't awful,
When I poured myself a pint out of the kegerator in the garage, I felt like the smartest guy in the room. You know, I made this, and so being able to take that enthusiasm for what I did for just a small group of people to a much larger scale is one of the things I'm really looking forward to.
Just the homebrewing community. I mean, it's just so strong here. It's so full of just great people who are always thinking, who are always into fixing problems and troubleshooting and just coming up with new, different ideas, and they're really inspirational people, and that's where I come from, and they're always going to be very important to me. So they're a really big part of my background as well.
I think they're really good. That's super healthy too, to have people with really good palates kind of checking everybody and making sure that the beers are good. I'm not saying they're going to come in and tell you anything bad. They're very appreciative of us too, but it's nice to have such an educated population in Portland where I can give the beer to Oregon Brew Crew and get real feedback, which is really nice.
The club has been around technically since 1978, but hadn't really been recognized since 1979. They are the oldest homebrew club in Oregon, and sure, great, that's historical, but what does that mean? How important? There's a lot of professional brewers that have come from the Oregon Brew Crew. Everybody from Rob and Kurt Widmer to
Alan Sprints.
Alan Sprints. As a matter of fact, he was three-time club president back in the day.
Oh man, my time at the Brew Crew was great. I mean, a lot of really nice folks, learned a ton. I mean, when you get that many brewers together, I mean, there's so much information exchange. It's just awesome. And so I feel like you can learn in a pretty accelerated way that way.
Because one of the biggest things the important things of being a part of a club is feedback. And not just your friends, because your friends will tell you that they love your beer because they want you to give them more beer. Getting impartial, critical, but constructive feedback is really hard to get from people who just like to drink beer.
I mean, we wouldn't be here without homebrewers. It never would have happened. They're the guys who basically told us we don't have to put up with this bullshit.
If I ever get back home to a two-tone, two-big group home, but downstairs from a landlord whose own goals ain't up to the code. A few blocks from an old flame who's right brain and won't make the change. A few more from the burnouts, the dead house, and all them loud mouths. Everybody was right there, 10 blocks square, with your shoes over there. We sit on blankets of pine cones and wine toes, and stare at the ozone. With no shoes and no socks on, a swan song and a shallow mop pond. We would chase the dogs on to the right lawn, to the fender loud.
We share what we make with others when they come here. We always get comments about how nice people are from Portland. And when I go other places, people have heard of Oregon. And so our reputation is much larger than I think people give us credit for. And that's one of the things that has drawn people here to open breweries or encourage people that live here to start breweries as well.
People do come here for the beer and for the beer culture, and it's growing. I mean, we're not just, it isn't just us supporting our beer habit now. It's people coming in from all over the place.
Around the country, you don't see, it's unfortunate, there's a lot of we do, our other company, our consulting company, we put in microbreweries and restaurants and distilleries all over the United States. And it's kind of funny, we'll go in different necks of the wood. And a lot of the reason those people hire our company, Turnkey Brewery Restaurant Consulting Group, is because we're Northwest guys, and I'm a Northwest brewer, and they see my bio and my reputation and what I've done. They're like, that's what we want to do, right? Emulate this out here.
I just heard that this was the place to come if you liked hoppy beers. I mean, the hops are grown in Oregon and also Washington State, so they're fairly local. and they had a large, craft beer community, and the most breweries in the world in any city.
When I go home to Wisconsin, people definitely are aware that Portland's a beer town. When I travel to Germany, people are definitely aware that Portland's a beer town. I think that in most pockets of the world, Portland's a beer town.
Our reputation is very solid as a beer community. If you see some of the backlash, it's kind of like when we used to go up against Ashville, North Carolina for best beer city. And Asheville would always win. And Portlanders would be like, they've got 8 breweries at the time, why do they think they're beer city? I think that we are very confident in what our reputation is, and Portlanders don't care. It's like, we're not gonna vote, we already know we're the best beer city. So you get a lot of, so some of the backlash you might see are people who are just sick of hearing about Portland, but they still recognize that Portland is an amazing city. And we get a ton of tourism because of our beer.
There's this, I think there's a bit of a cloak kind of over Portland because of these beers that don't get out, like Hair of the Dog. I mean, you look at, if you look at some of these like beer trading websites, what you can get for Hair of the Dog is outrageous, right? I mean, you get a nice Adam, you can get a lot of really good beer for a 12-ounce bottle of Adam, and that's pretty, and it's part of the cool factor for Portland is that a lot of this great beer doesn't necessarily go very far. Commons is another great example. I read the Wall Street Journal did this awesome article about the Commons, and it's a little, it's a smaller brewery, and I think I take it for granted going down there, and their new spot is awesome, and there's kind of this. I think that's why there's so much tourism to Portland, is that a lot of these beers don't get out, but people know that they're good.
Well, I will say tourism in itself has increased dramatically, and I don't know if that's just something I've noticed because of the industry I'm in or if it's a real fact, but tourism has increased insanely over the past 4 years. I feel like we found this niche in the US of being Beervana, of being this beer-centric city, and now people are flocking and supporting it. And not only are people flocking here as tourists, but people are flocking here as consumers and as residents. So we're growing in our population significantly, and it's people that love the beer culture. It's people that aren't going to go to the same spot every single weekend. Yes, they're gonna have their neighborhood pubs, but they're also gonna be like, oh, that opened, perfect, let's go. Oh, they have a new brew coming out, perfect, let's go.
Like, we always want more and more and more and different, and willing to kind of go from place to place to place to keep trying those. And I think that's what, I just say that we just love innovation.
We have probably 20 breweries in the state of Oregon that are as good as any brewery in the world. They're that high quality, and then another tier that is as good as most breweries in the country.
It was September when the sun showed its face, making up for lost time. One more taste of the Lord's good grace, the last of the summer wine. Now the sun beats down on the mountain tops, from the west hills out to Mount Hood. Indian summer in Portland town is the proof that the good Lord is good. You can tell me I should just head south, just pack my things up and go. I'd sooner stay in the northwest rain. There's nothing else that I know. I got a place by the St. John's Bridge. I'm working 4 nights a week.
But what makes it incredible about being a brewer here is that you have the absolute best drinking population in the world. And not talking about guzzling beer, but in terms of the sophistication demand. And that's why it's a fun challenge.
You better have your act together when it comes to the beer you're producing, because the consumer knows what it's supposed to taste like. That wasn't necessarily true when we started.
When you brew beer in a place like Portland, you have to bring your A game all the time. People here will call bullshit on a bad beer, no problem. People, you know, the drinkers, the average everyday Portlanders have that base knowledge.
It makes, even if you are making a classic beer style, it means you have to make the best. And because you've got this very critical audience.
People here know what's up and know what's good. You go to any beer bar, you go to the Beer Mongers, Bailey's Tap Room, Cerveza, you start talking beer with somebody and they're gonna, you know, give you their 2 cents on it. You might not agree with what they have to say, but if you hit a bunch of different places throughout Portland, you're gonna sort of get an idea of what, you know, the general consensus is about craft beer.
People in the city are very open into drinking a lot of different types of beers, and so it gives us a place to be able to experiment and not have to worry about selling something, because largely we know that we'll be able to sell it, which gives you the ability to do these experiments and to see if something's going to work or not. At least try.
There's all kinds of beer enthusiasts. There's the real nerdy people that are looking for specific things. They spend a lot of time researching, and then there are, you know, just people that enjoy the camaraderie of it. I mean, I think the variety of beer drinkers we get is far and wide.
There's some that know exactly what they want, and they want it every time the same. And then there's some that customers in the Gast House, you know, they come in and the first thing they ask for is what's new. That's what their primary interest is. Literally, half know before they leave the house what they're going to have, and half the first thing they ask is what's new.
When you greet a table in Oregon and you're working at a brewery, you ask them what kind of beer would they like? What kind of beer are you interested in drinking? How about a sampler tray? And people are interested in learning more and eager to try new things and open-minded in a big way in Oregon, because they're kind of used to the industry and the culture that we have here, and excited to learn more and experience more.
In Oregon, if you walk into a pub, you'll see a cross-section in that pub that looks identical to the cross-section outside the pub. So you'll see families with kids. You'll see middle-aged and elderly people. You'll see women for sure. This is a big thing. Women don't go to pubs in a lot of places on the planet. And they'll talk about this Mosaic Hop IPA, and they'll talk about the quality of that Mosaic Hop. They'll talk about the Saison they had at the Commons and reflect on how that differs from the Pales and the IPAs. When people release, one of the things about beer style is, in order to do variations on a theme, it's like art. It's all referential. So people have to know the base before, people have to know what an IPA is before you do a session IPA. So you have to have an educated consumer base to get what those two words mean.
Hi there.
Where's
So the end of a very long day.
Drew?
We've been doing 77 breweries in one day today.
Yes!
Oh, okay, no problem. There they are. They're all waiting for us up there.
77. 77!
You can try and see 77 breweries in one day. I don't know that I'd recommend it, but there's so much to see and do here in terms of the brewing world, and you'll never get bored. And you could come back every year and do a whole nother tour and try a whole bunch of other ones. And the great thing about Portland is that there is something for every palate.
So much fun getting up and coming to work here, and every day we're meeting new people that are enthusiastic about it. So I think that it's a great place to be. Very lucky.
It's just wonderful to be a part of it, and I don't know how I got so lucky.
If you told me in high school I'd be here at a brewer in Portland, Oregon, I'd be like, no way. It didn't even exist back then. And now here we are, and we've got 4,000 breweries in the country, and it's rocking.
I wanted people to be very connected to the brewery. So you can see behind me that you can drink a beer 12 feet away from where the beer is being made, and that's always been really important to me. And I think, again, it goes back to the community, that I want people that come through that door to feel like it's their brewery.
When it comes right down to it, my wife and I just want to run a successful small business that just happens to make beer and happens to do something that makes people happy. It makes us happy. It puts us in control of our destiny. Again, I don't have the magic next recipe to, be the next hot thing in craft beer. Maybe I do, but it's like we know how to put out a quality product. We know it's important to people who live in this part of town.
One of the coolest parts about my job is getting to meet these creative people. People that work in the beer industry are smart and they're talented, and people that work here at Cerveza are smart and talented. And I think that being part of the beer industry is probably one of the most fun jobs you could have.
Portland is an extremely special place for beer. The people that drink the beers, the people that make the beers, but no, I think it all behooves us to get out there and drink more craft beer. So and sit down and just shoot the shit. I think that's a good thing.
When we were getting started, I thought we were late getting into it, and now, people talk about us as being pioneers, and I didn't think that to begin with, but it's nice to be considered that way.
I thought that there was more, hey, let's start this movement, like that there was more of a kind of intentionality. And looking back, it doesn't seem like that was necessarily the case. Like, hey, let's make beer that we like and hope that other people do.
And that was kind of the fun part of it, just to see what worked. And we had our regular sitting at the bar, and they told us good or bad.
Everybody just wanted to make good beer. I mean, we were not trying to become wealthy or anything. We were just hoping we could make a living.
The things I used to kind of think about in 1986 when we started Portland Brewing, I was going, man, wait till these kids that are born right today in 1986 when we're starting our brewery, 85. They're going to grow up and they're going to know nothing but craft beers. I was 40 years old when we started getting into the craft business. So these kids now that were born in 86, they're 20, they're 31. They've really grown up with that beer. So they don't think about it in that same term. It's just like, oh, well, it's just like water. Hasn't it always been here?
Drunk again. I won't remember what you said, but I heard the show is pretty good. Get me to bed. I don't care who's next to me, as long as I wake feeling free. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anyway, 'cause I'm gonna burn this town down. My ex is dancing with a new girl as I sit at the bar, and these girls are from another world. They don't understand what music's for. Doesn't matter anyway. Doesn't matter anyway. 'Cause I'm gonna burn this town down. I'm gonna burn.
I think even, this is one day going to be Beervana tour guide. She's so excited about sharing her experience, but she just doesn't know how to verbalize it yet.